Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our presentation today on Autism Goes to College. This is a wonderful film. Technically, it's not a film screening. The film itself is actually more than an hour, so we can't show you the whole film. You will see some clips, and we'll talk about how you can see the film for free. And we have folks involved in making the film. We have a great panel discussion. You'll see some clips, and we'll talk about both how the film was made and some of the issues with counseling students on spectrum as they apply to college. So I'm going to jump right into sharing a clip with you, and then we will hear from our panel.
I went to college without a real idea on what I was going to be. I just knew, go to college because that's where you can get a job. What job? Well, that's something you have to figure out, Guillermo.
I hope to eventually pass this entire college and then move onward to become an animator for an animation company.
Throughout my whole life, it's been hard figuring out how I was going to be able to succeed as much as my peers and compare to them.
I'm undeclared, but they really want me to push towards biology. And then that's when I learned something about myself. I can't stand this stuff.
My dad drove me to the dorm, helped me unpack, and once everything was done, he's like, all right, cool, see ya. And that was the start of my adult life.
There's a lot of good things about college compared to high school. Like, for one, I don't have to get up at 6 in the morning anymore, and so I'm not falling asleep the whole day.
My second year kind of was very similar to my second year in high school, which was really academically struggling point for me. So like my parents were constantly like telling me, go seek out counseling. During one of those counseling sessions, I ended up disclosing to them, yeah, I'm autistic.
Jonathan stood up and said, they're doing a documentary about me on autism. And I saw some students kind of sit up a little bit and said, oh, that's what's going on. And it was almost like there was this acceptance.
I had to let him go, and he has to go and fly. He's a man, and he has to be the best he can be.
I have a bunch of friends now, surprisingly, because I didn't have friends up until a year ago.
So I'm trying to not let my anxiety get the best of me.
Good.
Yeah.
Eventually, I worked out with the counselors to just breathe in and out, think to myself that I can do this.
My parents sat down with me and they said, you just need to go and at least try it.
I'm just so worked up about what's happening now, but then everyone told me that I have to look for the future. And the future is looming over my shoulder. I don't know what to do.
So I hope some of you are wearing headphones like me because the music is great. We are going to introduce ourselves, and then you're going to get to hear a bit about how this film was made. All right, hold on 1 second. Let's share the screen again. So these are some of the things that we'll be talking about. And let's jump right into who the panel is. I'm Eric Endlick. I'm a clinical psychologist and educational consultant in Massachusetts, serving students on the spectrum worldwide. Yaz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you. I'm Dr. Yaz Valorian. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at UC Riverside, where I'm engaged in the development and testing of a professional development program for general education teachers of young students with autism in kindergarten through second grades. But my research interests also lie in the outcomes on the other end of schooling, that is in college. And I've collaborated with some of the folks here. So I'm excited to be here with you all and to share bits from some of these projects on post-secondary outcomes and autistic college students and their faculty.
Great, thank you. Sasha?
Hi there, I'm Sasha Zedike, and I'm an assistant professor at Cal State University Fullerton. And I have, like Yaz said, worked with Yaz and Jan a lot. And currently, Yaz and I are working on a faculty training program to help faculty better work with college students on the spectrum.
Thank you. Hunter?
My name is Hunter White. I am a senior year college student majoring in psychology at Dean College in Franklin, Massachusetts. I'm a college student that's on the autism spectrum, so this topic that we're about to talk about today is very relevant to me.
Great, thanks. And Jan, if you could not only introduce yourself, but introduce the film and tell the audience how this came to be.
Sure, Eric, and thank you for putting this panel together. I feel honored to be here with my distinguished guests. I'm Jan Blacher. I'm a professor at the University of California, Riverside in the Graduate School of Education and also in the Department of Psychology at UCLA. I'm director of the Search Family Autism Resource Center, and I'll be talking a little bit about the Autism 101 project that was run out of that center and spearheaded by Yasmin and Sasha, who are here today. So Eric asked me to say a bit about the bits of the film that you'll see today. The film is 63 minutes long, and we didn't quite have that long a slot to be able to show all of it to you. So you'll see you'll see some clips that were selected to facilitate the discussion that we'll have here today, and hopefully will elicit a lot of questions on your behalf. The film is really, it is a documentary that follows 5 students on the autism spectrum and their unique journeys in college, how they got there, what they did there, and more importantly, what they all aspire to do after college. You'll see that the journey was a bit stressful, not just for the students, but for their professors as well. Professors are often find themselves unprepared to balance the needs of students with autism against the needs of the rest of the students in the class. More than a great story, though, as I mentioned, this film is based on the Autism 101 project. We're over a series of studies over a couple of years. We interviewed autistic students and their professors. And originally, we thought we were just going to make a YouTube to illustrate some of the interesting data that we were collecting. But as soon as the filmmaker came to campus and started in on this project, he realized that there was a full-length documentary here. And together with his co-writer, the filmmaker is the talented Eric Linthorst, and together with his co-writer, Jody Becker, they put together this film. Now, as many of you in this audience probably know, autistic students who make it into a competitive 2 or 4 year college don't all graduate, and the success rate is less than we would like to see. One of the reasons for this, at least as we hypothesized, was the lack of accommodations or even understanding by their professors. Remember, these are the professors who give grades, who mete out internships and lab experiences, and of course, write job letters and graduate school recommendations. Another goal of this film was that we wanted to reach professors who often did not even realize that they had a student with autism in their class. So I think I'd like to turn this back to Eric to have him kind of address this issue of disclosing autism, both before students apply to college, maybe during the application process, and more importantly, once they arrive on college campuses.
Sure, it's a great question. And I think to a certain extent, it's individual to every student. So I actually had a couple of students on the spectrum this year who chose to write about autism in their college essays. For them, it was an important part of their identity, and they didn't feel like they could fully represent themselves without sharing that. I'm autistic too. I consider it an important part of my identity. That's why I use identity first language, autistic person, and not person with autism, any more than I would say, person with maleness or something. So if you want to share it, of course you can. There's no evidence that it's either going to help or hurt you, but it is sometimes a concern for families. How is this going to affect our application? And the flip side is you really don't need to share it unless there's something on the application that it would help explain. So in situations where there's something that might be puzzling, and sharing that piece of information would help the admissions committee understand what they're looking at, then it's absolutely fine to share that. So it's really a personal choice. You can choose it to share it or not share it. I had one student, for example, who changed high schools in the middle of high school because he felt like his high school was not supportive enough for his autism and his challenges. And so it would make sense so that an admissions committee looking at his transcript would see, oh, why did this kid change high schools? So he did, in fact, talk about that in his essays. But if you feel like your transcript and everything's pretty straightforward, you don't need to share it. Did you want to add anything to that, Hunter? Having gone through the process yourself?
I think planning ahead is really a key factor to enduring a successful transition to college, because I think a lot of the problems that happen between college students with autism and professors is that professors may not even understand that they have someone in their class with autism, yet alone they may not really know what the condition of autism really is. I mean, we're more of an autism accepting society. We have a lot more awareness, but there are still people out there that don't really know what autism is. Like, for one example, when I was a freshman in college, I went to the writing center because I needed help on a paper, and I was writing a paper about autism for one of my psychology classes, and the person that I was working with in the writing center didn't really know much about autism other than the name of autism, so I had to explain to that writing specialist what autism is. So that sort of made me realize that we need to gain more acceptance, and professors and faculty members should also be aware of autism, because like anyone you meet could have autism. It could just be you just don't know. It's not all. Sometimes you can't tell if someone has autism. Like, people come up to me when I tell them I have autism. Like, when I was a freshman, I hung out with this group of friends and I told them that I told them about my diagnosis, and then they're like, "Really? You seem like a regular person." And it kind of made me realize that, I think most people with autism, you just can't tell that they have it. I mean, people could know what it is, but it could be invisible. Like, they seem like regular people, you just don't think of it. So I would say my best advice for students to have a successful transition so they don't fall behind is when they go on college tours, if they're looking at colleges specifically that have specific learning services and support services, or even programs that help, I would say they should talk to the people that work for those programs right when they start college touring, and maybe set up like an interview time and schedule to have them interview with the Learning Center, so that way the Learning Center can know the strengths and weaknesses of that student, and therefore ensure a plan in place that will work for the student so that they won't fall behind and that they won't struggle when they get to college, because college is hard for anyone and the challenge is going to be there, but being prepared is really essential. When I was looking at colleges, when I looked at Dean College, I specifically chose that school because they have a learning program with students like me that learn differently. I met with the Learning Center. I even applied through their Learning Center when I was applying, and I met with one of the people that worked there, and I had an interview set up with them, and I interviewed with them. I talked about my learning needs, and that really helped me transition to college. So I think planning ahead is important, and I think ensuring that, I think shyness can be a big problem. I know a lot of people with autism struggle with being shy. I'm a shy guy too. I know what it's like. So I think overcoming shyness and having self-advocacy and self-confidence is really key too.
Thanks, Hunter. You made some great points. I just want to highlight a couple things you said. One is that in terms of disclosing, talking to the support programs or the Disability Services Office or both in the college selection process can be really helpful. So that would be a time where it would make sense to disclose so you can find out the services that are available to you, the accommodations that are available to you. That's different from disclosing it on your application. That's just disclosing it to people who might be giving you services and accommodations in the future. Second thing is you mentioned the word invisible, and that's really important too, because there are all sorts of challenges you can have being on the spectrum that could be invisible to other people, like sensory difficulties processing social cues, and a whole bunch of other things. And just because those challenges aren't visible doesn't mean that they're not real and important. So I'm going to now show another clip, and let's see if I can share properly. Got sound here, and we're going to share another clip and talk about more about.
With more and more students like Guillermo, Jasmine, Jonathan, Aniela, and Caroline, all academically capable, neurodiverse students arriving on campuses around the country, schools face a number of new and significant challenges, like
how do we address students that have extra needs, special needs, and how do we
Eric, can you hear me?
attention without taking away from.
Yes.
I think the share screen function didn't quite work properly. We could hear the audio, but not the video didn't come through. You
All
want to
right.
try it one more time?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I think I know what I did wrong here. Got to share the.
Happens to the best of us.
Hold on. Thanks for your patience. I'm gonna start the sharing over in a second. All right, now we should be able to do it. Here we go.
with more and more students like Guillermo, Jasmine, Jonathan, Aniela, and Caroline, all academically capable, neurodiverse students arriving on campuses around the country, schools face a number of new and significant challenges, like
how do we address students that have extra needs, special needs, and how do we give them enough attention without taking away from the class, and vice versa. And it's a constant dialogue.
Some teachers, unfortunately, were not very understanding, and the Disability Services Office actually sometimes made it more difficult. I had to start filling out forms to take tests, and it's like, I'm bad with executive functioning, so that's just making it worse.
How can schools encourage neurodiverse students to feel safe disclosing their diagnoses without treading on their privacy rights so that they can get help more easily, find good roommate matches, and make their professors aware of their needs so that problems can be avoided?
Accommodations are a civil right. Section 504 of the Disability Rights Act. One trend that's happening nationwide is that before, the burden of coordinating the accommodation was really placed on the student. Something that we've embraced here is more moving to an online forum where the student can request accommodations by a click of a button. Faculty get an email. So we're looking really at how to manage not just the workload for faculty, but providing a space that does not put the burden on the student with a disability.
Faculty are going to have these students in their classes whether they like it or not. Statistics show that they will.
It is estimated that approximately 2% of students at U.S. universities are on the autism spectrum. With over 20 million combined public and private college students in the U.S., it's likely that over 400,000 current students with autism attend colleges in the United States. That number is steadily rising.
We are just beginning to recognize neurological diversity in the broad population, and I want our university to be a leader in teaching the value of neurological diversity to those graduates who are going to go out into public service and hopefully make that message both the law of the land and the fabric of our culture.
Thanks for your patience with my technical challenges. So, as you know, the audience is largely consultants helping students make the transition to college and applying to college. So I'm wondering, Yaz and Sasha, and potentially Hunter, what advice you might have for them in advising high school students and their parents on how they can prepare for college and make that transition more successfully.
Sure. So I think, one way we can do this is really focus on the transition plans. As more and more transition age autistic youth strive for independence, a greater emphasis should really be placed on developing needed skills prior to exiting high school. So school-based professionals should target, social communication skills, as we know, but also independence and adaptive skills such as, self-help, health and hygiene, household maintenance, and money management, right? And so these should be targeted even if students appear to be succeeding academically in high school. We know from studies that while autistic college students generally report that their educational needs are met, they express not receiving adequate non-academic supports. So it's even more critical for us to target social and independent skills before they get to campus in order to best support their transition to college and to increase their opportunities for success in post-secondary environments. And I think one other thing we really know is that, and with regards to transition planning, is that a defining feature of a high quality transition plan is interagency collaboration, right? So this often involves collaboration with the students themselves, as well as their parents, teachers, and representatives from post-secondary environments. And so there are some creative ways to go about this. One might be to invite former autistic students who have successfully transitioned to college, right? Also, because of COVID and the shift to online communication, we now have greater access to people across the nation, right? So I guess a little silver lining in all this. So another option is to invite college representatives who are sensitive to the needs of autistic students to be guest speakers and to talk about how to have a successful transition to post-secondary. And lastly, I think as, someone who's been on the documentary team, I know that many high schools have shown Autism Goes to College to their students as an engaging and feasible way to expose high school students to post-secondary experiences and to help them prepare for, exciting as well as maybe not so exciting things to come. So I think those are just a few ways that really we can focus on transition planning and kind of improve our efforts during the transition plans.
I may just add one more thing to what Yaz said, and also kind of building on what Hunter said earlier about how autism tends to be an invisible disability. One of the things that has come up in our research is that students will say that in the Autism 101 study that Jan mentioned, students will say that they don't want to appear to be receiving special treatment. They don't want to appear different in college. College is something new and they've been different their whole life. And maybe they think college is the time that they can, be invisible. They don't have, some of them, right? And that is something that they may look forward to. But I think it's important to encourage them to really explore the services that are available. Like Hunter said, when you're going and visiting colleges and you're, just at least to know what's there and, give them the power to decide whether or not they want to disclose or not, but also educate them that it's not necessarily special treatment to receive services. Actually, services are designed to level the playing field, and we really want students to not feel stigma in receiving services. We want students to, understand that those things aren't special treatment. Those are just things to make things equal for them. And so I think that, is one thing that, and also students need to understand that by disclosing their disability to the Disability Services Center doesn't necessarily mean that their professors need to know what their disability is. So that's another thing that sometimes students don't realize. They don't actually have to tell their professors that they're autistic, right? They can just, go to the Disability Center, which then, communicates with the professor and tells them this is what the student needs. And I think students also should know that they don't have to actually tell individual professors or their fellow students if they don't want to. If they want to, great. Like Eric said, if it's part of your identity and you feel, that's just part of who you are and you want to share it, that's fine. But if you don't, you don't have to, but you can still receive the services and benefit from them.
Can I throw something in here? I mean, I think as executive producer of the film, which I neglected to say, I've seen it so many times. I have so many anecdotes to recall, and I wanted to recall something from the film that you won't see today, but you will if you see the whole thing, and bring it back to something Eric said, and that is about options for students. You know, just as the word neurodiversity implies, you know, variation, this film and our discussion today is not meant to proscribe any particular way that students should do things. But Guillermo in the film is perhaps the most colorful character, if you will, says at one point, I wish I had a cap that said, I'm autistic, because it would have made it so much easier for me. So that was Guillermo in trying to explain that professors didn't understand what his disability was, or even that it was a disability. So I mean, I think the upshot of this discussion is that it's good to be aware of all these things, but to each his own.
Yeah.
And students will vary in how they choose to do this.
Thanks. And thanks for reminding us that you're the executive producer. I should have mentioned that earlier too.
Well, I should have mentioned it.
I'm going to show another clip and hopefully we'll still have time for a little bit more discussion. Second, hold on. Get this going and then share the screen. Let's see if I can get this right.
I've always been an artistically minded guy. Due to my autistic tendencies, I tend to obsess over certain animation and series or films, most notably the works of Disney. In order to amuse myself, I draw the characters that I see on those films, try and sketch them out to more accurate detail, color them, cut them out, and keep them all in boxes so I could take them out and place them into piles to help amuse myself based on the ideas I have in my head. The overall registration process is for applying to each new college and having to pay for them and the like, and applying for financial aid. Those were the tricky parts. But the overall general classes, getting the textbooks and the books and the like, and figure out where to get to the classes, I was able to adapt to those as well.
He knew what he wanted to say. I kind of tried to help him, but he just kind of cut me off. He's like, I'm fine, Anna, like, back off, please. Yeah, he did not want to help. He wanted those essays to be straight from him. And I said, okay, well, if you don't want my influence on them, maybe have a teacher proofread them. And to this day, I have no idea what he wrote about. My mom sometimes was so hyper-focused on my brother and helping him learn stuff that she didn't take the time to help me learn stuff and just kind of expected me to pick it up. So for me, when it was time for me to go to college, she drove me to Chase Bank. She opened up a card, put $100 in it, gave me the debit card and said, make it work, and just dropped me off in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I told her, I said, look, you did that to me. It was unfair. I made it work. You can't do that to Jonathan. You can't just throw him in the deep end and expect him to swim. You got to start in the kiddie pool and, you know, slowly float him out.
I sometimes take meetings with the DSS as counselors to see if I feel disturbed or scared or stressed out by my experiences in the college. Sometimes I don't do the assignment properly, and I think I do my best, but it's still not good enough, and I get upset. There's more assignments coming my way, and I get so stressed out that I'll never be able to pass them. So eventually, I worked out with the counselors to just breathe in and out, think to myself that I can do this, and that the professors are providing this information for me, not to be mean or annoy me, but to help me progress as with my life so I can do better for the future.
So third time's the charm. That seemed to work okay. I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to jump in about what kind of a job you think staff, faculty, colleges are doing in terms of meeting the needs of autistic students and what more they could or should be doing.
Sure. So I think based on some research on this topic, we know that students sometimes report barriers to receiving student disability services. And this can look like, poor staff attitude, maybe limited knowledge of autism and long wait times. Kind of anecdotally, if we think about it, depending on the post-secondary setting, we also know that disability services tend to become more decentralized. So for example, students going from high school to four-year colleges or even 2-year to 4-year colleges might experience these decentralized services. So rather than going to one office for supports and accommodations, these might be more spread out across the campus. So in a sense, they kind of have to chase down their academic supports, their mental health services, their peer mentors, right? Which are all over the place. And this can be challenging for anyone, going through the transition and experiencing difficulties in post-secondary environments. So these are, some of the kind of issues that Jonathan tapped into when he was talking about his disability services, but also I think that they can absolutely be a great support. Hunter talked about kind of being prepared as we go into college, and I think disability services is definitely an area where we can help students become more kind of acclimated to, familiar with the types of services and how to acquire them.
I agree with what Yaz said, but one thing that has come up in our studies is that disability services, and I think we just know this, aren't necessarily tailored toward autistic students. They're often focused on students with learning disabilities or students with physical disabilities. It historically hasn't been that colleges and universities have needed to serve this population. And so that is problematic. And so I think that, we've encountered both, I would say, good and bad faculty, right? Good ones that have good attitudes that say, I want to learn more about this. I want to understand these students. I see them and I need to help them. And I don't know how. And then we have other faculty who, maybe we hear about them. They won't necessarily participate in our studies, but we hear from their colleagues that, oh, this student brings me this accommodation letter. They don't look like anything's wrong with them. Why should I help them? Right? Why did they need these services? It doesn't seem like there's anything, right? So we have this range of faculty, and I think it's really important that, we're aware of this and that, people like, researchers like us, people who are faculty, reach out to our colleagues, and we try to educate them. And just like we have trainings on sexual harassment and LGBTQ plus issues, right? We need faculty to really understand how to work with this population because it's growing, as the numbers were showing in that clip, the enrollment's going up, and autistic people have so much to bring to the workforce and, the world. And if faculty are more accepting and understanding of their differences and embrace their strengths, then I think the world will be a better place. So I think we really need to, a lot of faculty need help, and some of, like I said, some of them want the help. So we want to make sure we at least reach those who are willing to accept
it. To push against that a little bit, and I don't know if you know this, Sasha, but in the making of the film, we did interview some faculty who were very honest and open about their resentment about having to accommodate so many different kinds of students. Quotes such as, I'm the best in my field. I studied this particular science so I could teach only the best and the brightest. Why should I have to make accommodations? And we actually wanted to get that into the film, but when it came right down to signing the release form, those faculty were willing to be interviewed, but backed out of allowing those perspectives on the film. So we need to be aware of them. And to build on what Sasha said, what can colleges be doing more? They could be recognizing neurodiversity as an important aspect for all administrators as well as professors to be aware of. And we are hoping that this film will inspire universities, particularly the University of California and the Cal State systems, to make the online required faculty courses include a course on neurodiversity. These are 10, 20, 30-minute required learning courses that faculty have to take. And so that is a goal of this film. And I want to also put in a shameless plug for a couple of offshoots of this film that the audience can be aware of. Number one, the Autism Goes to Center online resource center is very nearly developed. And that will be for faculty to tap into, to learn more about the stories of the characters in these films, as well as the topics that will be covered. And maybe some of the folks on this panel will even have some of their writing and their curriculum development hosted there. So that will be a resource that we hope nationally will be tapped. The second thing is that there's a series of 4 to 6 podcasts being produced by members of National Public Radio who are doing this freelance. And those podcasts will focus on further development of the students in the film, looking back on their experiences, as well as new students that we hope to tap to be in those podcasts. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hunter if you have something to say.
Last I checked, you were writing a book too, right?
Yes, the book always lags behind. Media projects seem to fight their way to the front.
Okay, I'm hoping we can squeeze in one.
By Autism Goes to College will also be out.
I hope we can squeeze in one more short clip because I think it might illustrate a faculty interaction, but if you want to say something quick, Hunter, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I'll try to make it as quick as possible, but I do have a lot to say. It's a little bit off topic, but I'll still say it anyway because it kind of relates and it's important. But when they were showing the clip of Jonathan, I loved how they interviewed his sister, because I think a lot of times we tend to forget, especially when it comes to someone with autism, especially if they have neurotypical siblings. Like, I have a younger sister who's neurotypical. She doesn't have autism, and she's a very independent person. And part of that was because when I was younger, I needed a lot of help, and she sort of had to figure out things on her own. Like when she was talking about how her mother gave her a debit card with $100 and gave it to her, and she's like, here you go, you're on your own. They could have never done that with Jonathan. People with autism need a lot more guidance than neurotypical people, and that comes to everything, whether it's getting transitioned to college, maybe getting through college, but also such as making friends, dating, everything they need help with, what jobs. And it's not just, when someone has autism, it's not just the individual that struggles, but family members struggle too. It's hard for parents, it's hard for teachers, and I think it's especially hard for siblings, because siblings also need attention and guidance from their parents, and sometimes they're not able to get the attention that they need because the attention is focused on their sibling that has autism. And I find it especially common when there's an older sibling with autism and then there's a younger sibling that's neurotypical. The younger sibling, I think it's harder for them because they're younger, but also because they don't get as much attention as they would want or need. I mean, they do get attention, just not as much as the other person gets. So I think that's important to realize.
Well said. Yes, and I'm an autism parent, and my autistic son has a younger non-autistic sister, so I've been there from that standpoint, and I know what you're talking about. That's great advice. I think rather than show another clip, since folks will have the opportunity to see the whole film free in the near future, I'm going to show you what the website looks like, and then I'm going to let if Yaz, Sasha want to say a little bit about the resources available on the website and upcoming events. We'll also, when this, during the HECA conference, at that point, we can put some information in the chat that'll be helpful too. So here's what the website looks like. It has a link for anyone who wants to rent the film for their organization. It has a link for upcoming events, and there's an upcoming event on the 15th. Does anyone want to say anything about the website or the event, or should we leave that for the 14th?
Sure, Eric, just one more thing, since you showed the website, which is autismgoestocollege.org. About halfway down the page, there's information on the screening itself on the 15th and a link to register. So if you keep going down right there,
there it is. Yes, yes.
Yep. So if anyone's interested, you can go ahead and register there, and I'm sure we'll be sharing a flyer and other information during the live event, so stay tuned.
Yes, yes, you can just click right in the middle of the screen to see that. And folks can also, I believe, rent it on Vimeo if they are not able to attend that particular event.
Also, Eric, the event is tomorrow, so April 15th. So again, www.autismgoestocollege.org and sign up today.
Yes, well, thanks for all of you for joining the panel. We hope, we look forward to your live Q&A questions.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you.